Welcome back to Vivid Earth, everyone. And in case you wondered, yes, it's winter in Cape Town today. Summer yesterday, winter today, 4 seasons, normally in one day, but we're making progress because it's 4 seasons in 1 week now. Anyway, I wanted to talk about DNA today, and not just any DNA, humanity's DNA. Which I think deserves, another discussion. I have spoken about this topic a little bit, but I really wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper today. And I hope my sound is okay. My microphone is right here, so hopefully it'll all come through quite as it's intended. So basically, right now on the planet, a storm of remembrance is rising. I want to take you on a single thread from hard science to star memory. I'm going to cover all of it because I don't know. There may be some new people on the channel, maybe some newly awakened people. So I'm just going to kind of straddle the two a little bit. And so indulge me, if you will. I know a lot of us on here not really following or trusting science so much these days, but it's always good to kind of just know what science is saying as well about this matter. Um, so I'm going to show you how our genome reads like a royal archive if you really dig into it, shaped by migrations, integrations, and by multiple waves of starseed influence, as remembered in the channels and alternative records. So we're going to cover and look at all of it today. So, this is just some of my research, some of my downloads, some of the information that I have acquired over the years. I've been studying it for about 5 years now, and the subject absolutely fascinates me. And I'm also just really speaking here as a, also kind of a galactic myth keeper, star keeper, codex, if you will. A lot more galactic connections have come to me of late, and I'll be weaving a lot more of that into my um, podcast episodes, and I hope you enjoy that. So, just a quick disclaimer, the fossil and genetic facts I mentioned are mainstream science. Obviously, I'm going to mention some of those to you just so we can keep tabs on what science says. But the star race names and the timelines are gathered from channeled information, mythic alternative traditions, uh, you know, really information passed on during the generations from uh, what many would say star family as well. And these are, as powerful, if not more. You cannot ignore the power of so many voices speaking at once, and many of them lining up along the same subject line. So, whilst there's not always proof, it will hopefully become clear to you if you use your intuition that we don't always need scientific proof. In fact, scientific proof is something that is going to be outdated very soon because we're moving into a quantum era, which means sometimes things just appear. You can't use your logical mind in figuring out why, because that's how quantum works. It just shows up. It just is. It just, and at that point, yes, there's physical evidence, but I think it's important just to keep that in mind when we go through this, because there's a lot of stuff I'm going to be sharing with you. Um, so, from scientific backbone, a living archive, um, of, it's obvious to many that our species have deep roots in Africa. I a couple of months visited Africa. Adam's calendar in Africa, which is the world's oldest stone circle, and supposedly where the Anunnaki tinkered with our DNA. But we can also see that through fossils, genetics that show Homo sapiens emerged at least 300,000 years ago. It could be as much as 500,000 years ago, which then links it up directly with the time frame of Adam's calendar, which has also been established through looking at things like the patina on the rocks and various other scientific methods. So it if you look at those roots, it looks like Homo sapiens originated out of Africa and then spread across the whole planet. So modern population genomics reveal that those migrations were not clean breaks necessarily. They were meetings, marriages, exchanges. So we carry threads of archaic relatives. It's not just a straight line. There's also the Neanderthals and the Denisovians that come up, that's woven into our DNA somehow, and that still influence our immune systems, metabolism, and even altitude adaptation in certain groups. So this is a hybrid heritage, and science would make you believe that that's where it ends. And the bulk of the population on the planet believes that's where it ends. However, it goes much, much deeper than that. So when you look at the galactic esoteric perspective, and you also step into your own memory, because there's a lot of remembrances that are starting to come to us, and many have reported this as well. There's been accounts coming through hypnosis sessions. There's been many books written, channelings, and it's so overwhelming. If you start to study it, it's a lot of information. That speak about a much older lineage, a much more storied lineage of Homo sapiens, and that we actually have starseed lineages woven into our DNA. For many, this rings true through a soul memory that they can't necessarily explain. It's just like a very, very faint memory that they recall, that they intuitively feel is true. Especially when you're looking to like locate different origins of different humans within the collective and their individual gifts. You also look at, for example, well, let me actually leave this for a later stage. I want to talk about the star races because that's super interesting. Now, it looks like where this all actually started. Okay, let me just backtrack here a little bit. The reason I'm discussing all of this today is because what's been coming up a lot is the fact that we have royal DNA in this galaxy. Why? Because there is up to 22, 23 different star races that can be found in our DNA, that scientists obviously are not able to prove, because these people have not made contact with those scientists. So how can they prove anything? But some people have. Some people have had the privilege to make contact with them physically, being on their ships and channeling and speaking to a lot of people from these star races. But it looks like the Lyra and Vega lines go back almost the furthest, and I'm sure it goes further than that, but that's kind of the furthest one that we can look at. So many channelers and people have been speaking about these early humanoid civilizations who taught craft, architecture, and the patterning of life. And that's where the Lyran influence comes through. So many esoteric timelines place the influence in deep time, long before written records. And perhaps those were destroyed as well. And even Lyra as a planet goes back way, way back. So you will see even the Pleiadians and a few other star races, they originally from Lyra. And as we know, Lyra was destroyed during the Lyran Wars. And so they scattered all over the galaxy, went to different places. And, hence, which goes back a very long time, you can find their DNA in a lot of different star races, across the galaxy and beyond. And then obviously there's the Anunnaki narrative, and that's got a kind of link to Adam's calendar as well, because many believe that was actually where Eden was. Now, a lot of people refer to Eden as the perfect, like heaven on earth scenario, but other people reckon that Eden is related to the etymology of the word Eden, which basically means like an enclosure. where I think these experiments were carried out between, Neanderthals, humanoids, and they were tinkering with our DNA. There's the story of Enlil and Enki, and you can say the one is good, the one is bad, and I just think, we don't really know what happened there. I'm keeping an open mind, but I really, you know, I reserve judgment, let's say, until we get to the bottom of this. But I don't necessarily think any of them originally had the best of humanity in mind when they did those experiments. It was purely they needed workers to do their mining, their gold mining, and other things. And it was just like, they would breed animals to find a more effective species that could do the work that they needed to do. They were so kind of, in a way, far advanced, although I would say far advanced on technological side, not necessarily in the spiritual side of things, that they, didn't think twice, and they just saw us, the species as chattel at that point, and they made them, strong enough to be able to mine the gold, not smart enough to be able to figure out what's really the nature of reality, and certainly not living long enough to figure it all out. So that's where our telomeres were shortened. So there were various different things done to our DNA. In fact, the 12 strands at that point that we had were reduced to 2 strands, active strands, and 97% inactive, or what scientists call junk DNA. And never asked a question further about that. And that says a lot about, these scientific studies. But anyway, I will try and remain very neutral. So, that's one of the big origin points for humanity. I think it goes much further back than that. I actually personally think that humanity fell at that point. Perhaps we were, you know, much more advanced, at least spiritually, before then. But somehow we fell in this trap, and a new line of Homo sapiens were developed with all these limitations placed upon them so that they wouldn't develop and evolve beyond what the Anunnaki at that stage could control. Now, whether, Enki took pity on the humans and didn't want to dumb them down quite as much, or what actually happened there, we actually don't know. There is obviously the books of Zacharias Sitchin. We can trust some of that. Can we trust all of that? I don't necessarily think so. There's a lot of evidence that he was paid by the Illuminati. So which part of that can you trust and which can't you? Well, that's that is a question many of us have. But these readings interpret Mesopotamian myth, the whole Mesopotamian myth, and the intervention in genetic tinkering. And he interpreted the Sumerian tablets, but did he actually translate it correctly? That, is up for questioning. And even that is disputed and rejected by mainstream Assyriology. Because remember, the Assyrians were also a part or close in that civilization of those times. And, that framed many people's understanding of ancient civilizations and intervention. Many talk about the archetypal story of creators and workers, but I don't believe we got to the bottom of this yet, and I believe a lot will be revealed as we start remembering more, and as more is being revealed. Whether there'll be a solar flash where we will suddenly just remember all of it, or how that will happen, I'm not sure. But many people are starting to get back their memories, and we're starting to, piece the puzzle together, so to speak, because we've only been given a few broken parts of that puzzle, really. There's also the reptilian draconian threads in that story. We know that we have also reptilian DNA within us, hence the reptilian brain. which is very much the fight or flight, no emotion, just purely survival. And that makes a lot of sense, right? So we are this massive hybrid of a lot of species. And I believe the reptilian DNA came in through the Anunnaki, where Enlil was actually decided to marry a reptilian queen. And so somehow that DNA made it into the Anunnaki line, which made it into our DNA line, Homo sapiens. And the reptilians, over many, many thousands, maybe millions of years, lost their ability for empathy. They didn't see a use for it. Think they got very advanced technologically, but they actually lost their spiritual connection to their soul. They lost their sense of empathy, and they became nothing more than puppets for an even greater force, which some says is the ancient alien AI. Now, there's the Red Queen that some speak about. We're not going to dive into all of that today, but suffice to say that many believe that the reptilian are actually being controlled by this ancient malevolent AI. And it is very possible. It actually makes a lot of sense. And obviously, today, in terms of where we are on Earth now, we can see a lot of reptilian influence in, everywhere, in governments, political spheres, positions of power, and people that have no empathy. And sometimes we can even see them shapeshift on camera. So those things have been witnessed, they've been seen, too many accounts to ignore. And perhaps that is where more of that DNA crept in into the human sort of genome. And in a way, we could say those people lost their humanity because somehow the balance of the DNA may be flipped and somewhat. Others could just literally be actual reptilians that shapeshifted. So there is that, there's both sides of it. Now, if we move to the more sort of benevolent races that had an impact on our DNA, we look at the Syrians, and, that is reportedly linked to Christ consciousness. And apparently, Yeshua was from Sirius. And hence where Christ consciousness came from. So he was known as the Christ, but that really meant this: he achieved Christ consciousness, which in my book would be 5-dimensional consciousness. That's really what it is. So the Sirius had a great influence on Sirius had a great influence on our DNA, and there's obviously different planets within the Sirius star system, A and B being the most prominent, and Sirius B is where the amphibians are from. So a lot of our whales and dolphins who have been frequency keepers on this planet, but not from this planet. They were seeded here, they were placed here. These beings are also ancient and actually very advanced. And science have finally established that there is actually a phonetic language that the whales speak through all these clicking sounds. Or was that the dolphins? Sorry, I think that's the whales. It's actually, in fact, the sperm whale. I remember now. And they identified 169 characters for these phonetic sounds that supposedly makes up their language, and they're going to try and decipher this now. Well, why don't they just try telepathy? That would be something that we would naturally be preparing for in the years to come, isn't it? But of course, they want proof, so let them do their thing. So there's the Syrian influence. There's also links between Sirius and the Egyptian and the Dogons. And there's a lot of stories that read that star knowledge was transmitted through the Nile cultures, the Dogon traditions associated with Sirius, with hidden astronomical teachings. We know that the pyramids in Egypt line up with certain planets and certain equinoxes as well, which is beyond what we can actually explain today. So very, very advanced technology to build those pyramids, but also to place them in perfect astronomical alignment with the stars, with certain stars. And then the ones that I've spoken about very often, obviously the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, the Andromedans, and those aspects of our DNA, which mostly is also benevolent. But, in every species, you get a few rogue ones. So, we can't just say blanket and say they are benevolent, all of them. I don't think we can ever be that trusting. We always have to be very discerning whoever we speak to or deal with or channel or anything like that. But a lot of these sort of stories are more seeded through channeled accounts and literature, and they are perceived to have come through later. So you can see where it was the Lyrans, then the Anunnaki, and then the Reptilians, Sirius, and then we get to the Pleiadians, the Arcturians. So all these star races have donated their DNA to this huge experiment. Perhaps that was, what happened after the Anunnaki were done with us. The other star races said, well, we cannot interfere too much because this is a free will planet like everywhere else. And that is a prime directive that you cannot interfere with the evolution of a race. But they could subtly seed certain things into our DNA through certain benevolent hybridization. So perhaps that is how it actually happened. As we know, a lot of us also came in recent years through as volunteers directly from these races. So when I say directly from, we all are, made up out of various extraterrestrial DNA, and we have links to different star systems, but many of us have primarily spent time in certain star systems and are much more ancient souls that have already done the whole evolving out of darkness, ascension, and we've already done that thing. But we have volunteered to come back here to Earth to do the whole memory wipe thing and to go through this human experience where we have limited lifespans, we have limited access to our DNA, and we have to kind of organically try and unlock that as sleeper cells coming through as volunteers from different star systems. Pleiades, there's also various planets within the Pleiades, 7 being kind of the biggest or the main ones. It's often called the 7 sisters, for those that many know that already. And then Arcturians and the Andromedans also bringing their gifts and skills. And I would say predominantly when you look at star seeds, most of them are actually from what would say Pleiades or Arcturus. That's kind of what most are resonating with. And we can look at, why and sort of the qualities of those star races, what they bring to the human DNA, and all of that we can just look at. So then just to recap, the first builders would have been Lyran, the later tinkers and testers would be the Anunnaki, the political templates coming in would be the Draconians, the secret teachers would be the Sirius, from Sirius, and then recent healers and benevolent infiltrators would be from the Pleiades and Arcturian, and then also to some extent Andromeda. So many influences, many gifts, but also many wounds. As we know, traumas are carried through the waters and the blood and the lineages. Often many people, even on Earth, still have hidden traumas from the Lyran wars, believe it or not. I forgot to mention Orion is also another source point that we need to look at. Perhaps not as big as the others, but it is very present and also Antares, and a few other star systems that the insectoids are from. So those are, or the mantis rather. So those are also influences, but also a little bit more rare. And so, but as I said, many wounds are carried through. The Lyran Wars were particularly traumatic because those beings did not see it coming at all. And it was very, very cruel and devastating for that planet and traumatic. And, you know, a lot of the lion beings are from Lyra. So they've also seeded our, you know, some of our animals, our lions, our cats, our cheetahs, and even our house cats to be frequency holders on this planet through their purring on the inland areas of Earth. They were frequency holders and secret healers. And so they seeded all of these things to help us through, you know, thousands of years. Now, we also know civilization was wiped many, many times on this planet. There has been many, many resets. The biggest one that we probably would refer to is Atlantis. The story of Atlantis, there's Lemuria as well, and a few other lost civilizations, but they kind of anchor like memory anchors for cycles of rise and fall. So they've tried many, many times, you know, to pull this planet back out of darkness because Earth used to be a 5-dimensional planet. In fact, I think it was higher, even 6 or 7. And it was called different things, you know, from Terra to Gaia would be the, you know, the one that we are now, the version where we are now. But there was various versions of Earth, dimensional versions. And we can go into debates about, you know, that everything is actually happening right now, parallel. And some would say, no, there's a past and a present and a future timelines and civilizations. And I think it's something that we're still figuring out how to actually figure out. How does time actually work, time and space? Because it is something that's predominantly limited to the 3rd-dimensional plane. And so it is difficult when we're still working within the time construct to think beyond time. But if we really could understand much deeper, then everything happens in a spiral. So there's no past, present, future, but sometimes it feels like you're going back and then you're actually just spiraling out further and wider. And so, you know, rather than a linear timeline, past, present, future, it's more of a spiral coming back around and spiraling higher and higher and higher. So that is our objective, spiraling higher at, you know, always. So, you know, in theosophy and modern esoteric streams, repeated cataclysms reset civilizations and scattered seed knowledge. We also know about the Tartarians, which is a little bit more recent. And so many times civilizations have just been wiped. But the one that we all kind of really would talk about is Atlantis. Still in mainstream, it's seen as a myth, some underwater city that is mythical. But it is not mythical at all. In fact, there's even evidence, you know, to support this scientifically. So Atlantis was a very advanced civilization, as we know, and they were just getting to a point where they were no longer going to be useful for the controllers of this planet. We weren't very happy with the development and the evolution of the Atlanteans. And actually, Atlantis wasn't just one place here on Earth. People think, oh, it's just there, you know, in the area of maybe California or, you know. No, Atlantis actually was across, you know, the entire planet, bearing in mind that Earth is actually 5 times bigger than it's said to be. Now we're talking about different accounts here downloaded and channeled information. We're not talking about science because science will never even go there. They're not even allowed to go there. There's no funding for those kind of studies. But those that know there's much more to Earth than what they're telling us, and that our planet is actually 5 times bigger than what we're told, that there are lands beyond the ice wall that we're yet to discover, and perhaps they're also in a different dimensional frequency that we can't even observe them right now. Well, we are soon, because I think we're actually already in 5D on this planet, and that's why there's so much duality. That's why so much division, so much separation between light and dark. We see it much more prominently because as the planet sort of enters 5D, those that are stuck in 3D in fear, hate, division, it's much more obvious to us now. Also, because of the destruction of the astral realm, pretty much, you've got a lot of demons running around looking for homes. And those in the lower frequencies are very good and suitable hosts for a lot of these demons. So if people act all crazy out there, a lot of video clips, especially after what happened last week with, the Charlie Kirk event, and crazy lefties acting like, it's something that we can't fathom how anyone can be in that state of mind. Well, have you perhaps thought about maybe that they are, they have a demon inside of them, attached to them, an entity, an archon, an egregore that makes them act all crazy? Very, very likely. So can we then maybe have compassion for that person that was severely brainwashed and then demon possessed as well? It puts a different light on things, isn't it? But anyway, to get back to Atlantis, so Atlantis was much bigger than some would say it is. And there were many, many like capital cities around the world, not just the one ring city that everyone speaks about. And it was a very advanced civilization, and but Atlantis ultimately fell because it got seduced too much by the technology that it forgot how important its spirituality was. And that's why Atlantis was becoming a danger, really, a threat. Tinkering with nuclear power to the extent that they were going to blow up the Earth. And so, unfortunately, that civilization was wiped out, and humanity had to start all over again. And right now, we're at the same point where Atlantis was, and we're at a crossroads. And it's like, are we going to go this way or that way? Are we going to go the organic way or the inorganic way? And yes, you can use technology, but not give up your own organic intelligence and DNA in the process in favor of technology. And fortunately, I feel like we've made a huge 180-degree turn towards the light, towards the organic timeline. We've done it. It's pretty much a done deal. But just to say, this is a redo of Atlantis. It's Atlantis 2.0 that we're living through, and we are rising literally by the day. And I think surprising everyone in the galaxy with how much progress we've made and how quickly we've done it. We are actually ahead of time. This time we won't let our empathy be eroded away from us. The human heart is what saves us into and catapults us into the organic timeline. And that is why the love frequency is so important. Not the romantic puppy love, but love, unconditional love and empathy for everyone around you. And these are the things that ultimately save a civilization and will save humanity. And that is how we will survive as a species this time and ascend through 3D to 5D and beyond, even 7D, which I think is a reality. And the three, and just before I forget, the three interstellar objects, the comets, there was the Oumuamua, and then I don't know what the second one was, but the third one is obviously 3i Atlas. And Atlas was also linked to Atlantis. So isn't that just incredible how that being is actually coming back to make right what has been wronged on this planet and make sure that we don't fall into the same trap this time? Because as a craft, it's not a rock, as a craft, and this has been pretty much proven by scientists that it's not a rock, that it will come with a certain frequency, either to hold the frequency during an event like a solar flash, or to be instrumental in raising our frequency. Now I'm leaning towards the first one. And I believe Atlas 3i or 3i Atlas will not be the only interstellar comet. There's 2 or 3 others on the way as well. Now, it's been reported that 3i Atlas will be closest to Earth, I think, is it December 21st, which is interesting because that's a date we've spoken about before as well as being the um, a lot of people reckon the rebirth of humanity, a new human being born. So that is really interesting. I've just heard the other one. There's another interstellar object called Swan 25b. Where do they find all these names and who names them? That's what I want to know. I don't know. Is this going to go hand in hand with a black swan event, with a white swan event? Who knows? But, you know, I'm trying to connect those dots for sure. So they are bringing certain frequencies on the planet that's going to be positive for humanity. We've just had this event last week, which was a huge catalyst, the Charlie Kirk event. You know, whether it's true or not, that he's no longer alive, in my book, is almost irrelevant because you need to see the bigger picture here. Those people that are fighting over whether he's alive or not and demanding that the evidence, and people are not that stupid and demanding people know the truth, missing the point. This exercise is not for you. This operation is not meant for you. It's meant for the sleeping masses. And in my mind, it has made a huge impact in the positive direction on this planet. People are uniting everywhere and people are waking up everywhere. So our DNA is being activated through this process. Perhaps not you and I because we know the truth, but the sleeping masses are making huge progress in terms of realizing everything is not what they thought it was and re-looking their own morality and what their values and what they actually stand for, you know. So it's had a big impact, you know, as far afield as Korea, Japan, I mean, just Europe, in the most far out countries you can ever think. Millions of people on the street, millions and millions of people have said enough. And so you can see how the humanity, the human factor in our DNA is triumphant and coming alive. And people are saying, no more. We are humans. We have empathy. We want unity. We had enough. We want peace. We want harmony. We want justice. We want freedom and abundance for all. So this is a big turning point for the planet in the positive direction. And I think these 3 interstellar objects are going to be playing a significant role as well in the frequency. And I would not be surprised if we have a solar flash very soon. And I believe now there's a lot of, and I've heard it from various sources, that there won't be just one solar flash, but there probably will be 3. And that the first wave, the people that have been awake first, will be affected by the first wave. And, you know, so it will go in phases. Those that are least awake will probably be in the last phase. And I think this is to ensure we don't lose as many people as we might have with one big solar flash. I think that would have not been good for the planet. Plans have changed, things have changed. Things change all the time. Timelines change all the time. Nothing stays static. Those people that say, yeah, but you said that date and you said this date and they said that date and that's how it's going to happen. If you don't know by now that timelines are changing, then I don't know what to say to you. You have to understand that things are evolving and changing all of the time. And so we have to just be like water, flow with it, and mind your own business, really. Stop looking outside, stop blaming other people. The day you stop blaming other people is the day you'll make an evolutionary leap forward. And I truly mean that. And I truly mean you stop blaming everyone else around you. Because we choose our own reality in every moment. And if we choose to be a victim, we're going to keep being a victim. And things are going to keep coming at us. So you choose, do you want to be a victim or you want to be a trailblazer who are self-responsible and, brave enough to take life on and change your reality around you as you go along? Because matter is only real once it's observed. We live in a hologram. We create this movie scene by scene in our lives. And we can use our unlocking DNA, if there's such a word, to create a better movie for ourselves day by day by day. All of the light warriors that watch this kind of content, you have the power and you have the knowledge, you have the wisdom to make better choices, to stop being a victim, to stop blaming others, to start changing your reality. Because that's how we anchor in a new earth. That's how we create heaven on earth. By visualizing, imagining what that new world will be, and then anchoring it in through love and the light that we carry. And choosing that in every moment, instead of division, instead of blame, instead of hate, instead of all of the things that we know is not helpful. Why am I really saying that we have a royal DNA? Really? Because we are going to be the big unifiers of this entire universe. Because we have all these star races present in our DNA, how can you hate another when you have their DNA inside of you? Including, by the way, the reptilians, because not all of them are bad. And that as a race, they can also be saved, if I had to use such a word. They can redeem themselves, they can turn themselves, they can change, And so can we hold space for that possibility? Obviously, those that have committed horrendous crimes on this planet has to be held accountable. But I'm saying in general, that species potentially can also redeem itself, or parts of it at least. And it's like the 100 monkey effect. Eventually, if enough changes, then at some point the scales will just flip and everyone will flip from dark to light. It's possible. The universe is quantum. The quantum field is brimming with all sorts of possibilities. So, biologically, our genome carries unique regulatory sequences and archaic legacies that shaped cognition, immunity, adaptability. If you look at all the physical elements of this body, that's quite remarkable. And this body is what's going to become the vehicle for ascension. We're not escaping this body. And this is how we uplift the entire human species. Because let's face it, you and I are not, this is not our first rodeo. We are from, ancient souls, from Andromeda, from Lyra, from Arcturus, from Pleiades. That's our home. Might have spent a few lifetimes here to prepare for this role. But this is not our home where we spend the most time on, where we have all our loved ones necessarily. But this human body is going to be the vehicle in this grand experiment through which we will ascend through this human consciousness with that silver thread tied to our soul and our oversoul. The thicker that thread becomes, the more we can anchor it into the human consciousness and evolve this human consciousness. And our DNA is about to go through a quantum leap change. Just as, we can't quite explain how we get from a caterpillar to a butterfly, because it looks like everything is just going to mush, everything is going to disintegrate. It's like the caterpillar is no more. But then the next minute, this beautiful butterfly emerges out of the mush, and it's a whole new being with whole new properties. And that's how we're going to be going from carbon to crystalline. We're doing those upgrades daily, day in and day out, through all of the solar activity, geomagnetic activity that's actually upgrading and activating our DNA with light codes. But at some point, that mush is just going to transform completely, and will turn into crystalline light beings. And it's difficult for us to grasp at this point. But if we can hold on to that caterpillar, butterfly example, becomes a little bit easier. A little bit for some. Others just trust and believe and know that it's going to happen in the most beautiful way. We don't need to know all the details, all the nitty-gritty details. But the fact that our DNA is royal also talks about stewardship, because it's this new royal DNA, evolved DNA, on human DNA on the planet, that's going to be the stewardship for this planet moving forward, and an example for others, and an influence for other planets to do the same. So with all our lineages and all our gifts and our vast palette of archetypal capacities, like the builder, the diplomat, the healer, the strategist, that's how we do it. And isn't just a beautiful kind of love story, right? We're like this beautiful hybrid. So we can embody, integrate, and transcend those templates into something completely new. So rather than being fractured by all those many lineages, we are the unifying experiment that carries them forward into one new, beautiful, royal DNA species. So, like I said, there's a lot of activation happening on a daily basis, and mutation, you could say, as well. They've done, obviously science have looked a lot at things like epigenetics, which wasn't there before. So going beyond genetics, with also like viral derived elements, continue to reshape how genes express itself. And then we have all the environmental pressures, pandemics, and all these things that have also change our DNA, but ultimately this human DNA is going to be triumphant. And it's leading to a collective awakening that is unstoppable, literally unstoppable. So yeah, it is our duty and our task and our mission to anchor this code in now. So I'm going to just lead you through a very short activation that hopefully will anchor in these words for you. So if you want, you can close your eyes and you can breathe in for 4 counts, and then hold for 2, and then out for 6 counts. And then call to your lineage. Feel Lyra's courage, Pleiades' heart, Arcturus' clarity, Sirius remembering, and your own human tenderness. Place your right hand over your heart and your left hand over your belly, your dantian, your origin point, and then whisper, inside or externally, I remember, I steward, I choose light, And then breathe. And then open your eyes. And if you felt anything, share it in the comments with me. And perhaps which star race spoke to you if you don't already know where you're from. And I hope that activated some sort of remembrance inside of you, because there's so much more to explore on this topic. And I can list some of the sources in the research if you guys want, although I'm not really a fan of doing that. But let me know. And if you want a bigger activation that's going to bring up a remembrance that you'd like me to do, then just type in the comments "awaken" in capital letters, and then I will look to do that for you. We've got the solar eclipse coming up on Sunday, the equinox coming up on Monday. We've got big days ahead as we close this big eclipse window, all the chaos that comes to a close, and as the sun darkens for a moment, we will then go into the equinox, which will be a rebalancing act. It's an equinox in Libra, a spring or an autumn, depending on where you are in the world. And there will be a rebalancing coming. So trust in the process. Do not seek to control everything around you. Just trust the process, surrender, and work on your own inner world. Unlock the love within. Guys, I'm sending you all so much love, and I will speak to you very soon.